Hi, I'm Seth Atwater. I'm the literary life coach, and this is,
I'm Seth Atwater Jr.
and we're here today. We're going to introduce you to our new podcast. So, this podcast, I'm just going to really start out with a little bit of an introduction to what it's going to be, and then in the future, we won't do this again because you'll know.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we're hoping to do is, with this podcast, is it's a we'll release 3 episodes a week. The first episode that will release on Mondays will be a theme song episode, a literary theme song or a media theme song, where Seth and I, one of us will choose a theme song for a book, a character from a book or a movie or a TV show, a video game, whatever. But what we'll do is we'll present a theme song that we feel like really represents the character, the book, the movie, whatever media format it is.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about why we feel like that song fits that character or that book or whatever. And then the Wednesday we will release our first media analysis podcast or media analysis episode, and that will be, we will talk about we'll analyze the relationships between characters in different media formats, and from a storytelling point of view and also from a psychological point of view. Mm-hmm. And then Friday we will release a second media analysis episode. So each week you'll be getting a theme song episode and then 2 media analysis episodes.
Right.
So that's the format.
Mm-hmm. And my dad has a lot of background in mental health and like life coaching and things like that, and marriage and family therapy. So he'll kind of be covering the relationship and mental health analysis kind of side of those things. And I am a writer, and I know a couple things about how story structure works, so I'll kind of be covering the literary side of the analysis that we do.
Right, and then we will also have Jessica Atwater and Genevieve Maxwell with us from time to time, and they will also give some analysis on and some of their thoughts on these ideas as well.
Yeah. So should we get into our first
theme
song then?
We should. So Seth, why don't you introduce the book and then I'll introduce the song this week.
All right, great. So the book that we're presenting or picking a theme song for this week is Percy Jackson, specifically the first book in the series, the Lightning Thief, which is we didn't pick it specifically for this reason, but it's good timing because I just finished rereading that book because I was reading it aloud to my younger brothers, so I have a lot of very fresh thoughts about it. And my dad, the other Seth, has a theme song that he's had in mind for this book for a long time that I think fits it really, really well.
So this is a story about Percy Jackson, who is the son of
Poseidon, the god of the sea.
Right. So in Greek mythology, so the story kind of brings the Greek gods from Mount Olympus to New York City.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a looking at the world, what it would be like if the Greek gods lived in the modern world and they were having children like they did in the Greek mythology, right, where you had these kind of demigods who were the children of the gods, who had specific powers and abilities that they would get from being the children of half. So
Yeah.
They would be half mortal and half god, because they usually were born oftentimes were born to a mortal woman, but had a father who was one of the gods.
So all the main characters are half-bloods or demigods who kind of go to this summer camp together where they train to be heroes. That's called Camp Half-Blood.
Right, and then Percy Jackson as he's kind of integrating into this society, and then also there's and then it goes from that camp to all these adventures that Percy and his friends have as
They go out on this quest that is sort of incited by a prophecy that they receive from a modern version of the Oracle of Delphi.
right. So the theme song that we've chosen, and this is a theme song that I chose from, and this is the song Presto by Rush, the band that was singing primarily 70s and 80s, but they did get into the 90s as well. But one of my very favorite bands. I love Rush, and one of the things I love about Rush is that their lyrics are very philosophical and thought-provoking, and they're not a very light-hearted group. They're a very, very dense
Very
group.
deep. Yeah.
And so the song Presto really stuck out to me when I first read this book years ago, and I read it because Seth was reading it and Genevieve was reading it, and so I sometimes I like to read the books that my children are reading so I can keep up with their interests and what they're doing. So I read this
we
book.
were in the generation that was like really defined by this story. Like it was our Harry Potter.
Right, exactly. It really was for you guys, and so as these books came out, and as we read, and as I read this book, immediately this song came to my mind, and it's interesting. So I'm going to go through a little bit, and Seth will talk about how it relates. It starts off with, "I am made from the dust of the stars, and the oceans flow in my veins." And
So
to me,
that's
like,
kind of obvious how that relates, right?
the dust and the stars. I'm half God,
Mhm.
and the oceans flow in my veins. That's
Because
the specific God.
It's literally just tells you who his godly parent is, which is Poseidon, who is the god of the ocean.
Right. So I think that introduces him right off the bat, which is fantastic. But then I love this next line too. "Here I hide in the heart of the city like a stranger coming out of the rain." And that is exactly what he's kind of in the heart of the city. He's in New York City, and he lives in New York City with his mother.
And he's being like, his mother is specifically kind of trying to hide the magical side of his life and the nature of his true parentage from him, because it's dangerous for him to be aware of that, because the heroes and half-bloods in this story attract monsters to them. So his mom is doing everything she can to avoid getting him into the dangerous situation of having to be on the run from ancient Greek monsters all the time.
Right. So here he
So he's
is
hiding.
hiding in the heart of the city.
Which is New York City.
And it says, "like a stranger coming out of the rain." And I think, again, he feels that way, right? He doesn't feel like he really fits and he really belongs, and he has
No.
these issues that
he struggles with like ADHD and dyslexia, and is kind of considered to be a little bit of a delinquent.
Right.
Which a lot of that is kind of coincidental, because he does still attract weird supernatural problems. He ends up getting kicked out of every school that he's in because of monsters and mishaps.
Right.
But he really does struggle to fit in because of these both more realistic, relatable difficulties and the more supernatural ones.
Right. So really this first stanza of this song is an introduction to our character. "I am made from the dust of the stars, and the oceans flow in my veins. Here I hide in the heart of a city like a stranger coming out of the rain."
Yeah.
That is our introduction to the character, right?
I feel like we almost have to preface this with like saying that not all of the theme songs that we come up with are going to be quite this exactly one for one. Like we have a lot of really good theme songs prepared that we're going to talk about that are that do line up really well with the books, but this is so exact.
Right. And so let's go to this next
Yeah.
stanza, and I'm gonna let you kind of explain some of this to us. "The evening plane rises up from the runway over constellations of light. I look down into a million houses and I wonder what you're doing tonight. So how does that fit with this book?
Um, well, I think I'm being a little distracted by the plane part because Percy specifically, he can't fly because his father has a little bit of animosity with his brother Zeus.
Right.
And so when Percy is like in the air, he's in Zeus's domain, which puts him in a lot of danger. Um, but
So let me point out just something really quick. I think it's beautiful. The wording here is beautiful, right? The evening plane rises up from the runway over constellations of light, right? You think of constellations as being the stars up above,
yeah,
in the sky, but I love this image of as you take off in the plane and you're looking down on the lights of the city, and that's the constellations that you're seeing, right?
yeah,
And then he says, I look down into a million houses and wonder what you're doing tonight. And to me, this is more of the idea of him being away from his mother.
right,
And you get this image with him that he's worried about his mom.
yeah,
Like he wants to take care of his mom. His mom is with a stepfather, and the stepfather is not doesn't take good care of her. He's abusive. He's mean, and so Percy has this thing of where he wants to take care of his mom. So whenever he's not where she is, he's still kind of thinking about her.
yeah. I mean, in the first book, which we're talking about specifically, that is a major part of the plot because he is separated from his mother at the beginning of the story. Like for a significant portion of it, he believes that she is dead,
Right.
and he only takes on the quest initially because it's going to lead to him going to the underworld where he thinks he might be able to bring his mother back.
Right.
But I think, yeah,
Yeah, so you get this image here, of leaving, right? The evening plane rises up from the runway. Now he's not actually Percy Jackson's not actually in a plane, but he is leaving his mother.
yeah,
Over constellations of light, I look down into a million houses. It's like as he's leaving, he's looking out over this huge city that he's leaving, and he's wondering what about his mother, right?
yeah. And I think that actually plays really well thematically with the story into the next line that kind of is a pickup into the chorus where it says, "If I could wave my magic wand, I'd make everything all right." And I was thinking about this actually specifically in relation to having reread the book recently. One of the really interesting things about Percy Jackson, especially in the first book, is that his antagonists that he deals with aren't mostly your real traditional fantasy villains. They're not big, scary, mustache twirly, evil Dark Lord kind of characters. They're mostly bullies. Bullies and abusers and people who want to put other people down for the sake of building themselves up, but in
Right.
a very realistic and relatable way. He has to deal with bullies at school at the beginning of the book. There's Clarice at
Once he's at
Camp
Camp
Half-Blood, but then there's
Half-Blood,
also adult characters who are bullies, like Dionysus, who is kind of the director at the camp, really doesn't treat Percy well at all.
Right.
Doesn't even bother to remember his name. Or there's his stepfather, who is really abusive to him and his mother, and who his mother is only with because he literally smells so bad that it keeps the monsters from being able to smell Percy's like godly blood.
Right.
And so he's dealing with all of these different bullies and abusers, and he would love to be able to say, I could just make all of this better and make all of it go away.
Right.
But realistically, that's not how it works. Like, with some of the bullies in the story, he's able to do that. He, with Ares, for example, he gets to a point where he has a fight with him and actually beats him. But with a lot of the characters, he just kind of has to deal with them. And with his stepfather in particular, in relating it back to his relationship with his mom, a big point at the end of the book is him realizing that it would be wrong for him to be the one to deal with saving. He wants to save his mother from this horrible guy, and he realizes it has to be her decision. This isn't something that I can do for her.
And I'm just going to throw something in here. There's going to be a lot of spoilers in these in these discussions. So just so you know, right from the start, we're going to be talking about the books. We're going to be talking about movies. We're going to be talking about and if it's something you haven't read yet, just know there's a lot of spoilers.
Yeah.
Every time we talk, we're going to talk about. We're going to have a
Probably
lot
should
of
have given a
spoilers.
spoiler warning earlier, but most people have read Percy Jackson by now. It's not. It's not an old book, but it's not like super like hot off the press either.
Right. Okay, so let's move on because I love this next line too.
Yeah.
I'm not one to believe in magic, but I sometimes have a second sight. I'm not one with a sense of proportion when my heart still changes overnight. And I think that first line, Percy, his mom has kind of protected him from this magic idea that, and that's one of the things I like about, that's kind of fun about the book is that he is magical, but he doesn't know. And of course, this kind of harps back a little bit to the Harry Potter thing where Harry's a wizard, but he doesn't know it because his aunt and uncle aren't going to, or don't inform him, don't
And
tell
there are
him.
a lot of things about the structure of the story that kind of follow the basic idea of Harry Potter.
Right. So Percy, now for a different reason, Percy is being misled about his parentage and his abilities. So he says, "I'm not one to believe in magic," because he's never been taught. So I think that goes along. But I sometimes have a second sight, and there's a specific scene that always makes me think of this line, and that's when they're in the museum, and nobody else can read the inscription on the statue except for Percy because it's in Greek.
And he's like hardwired to understand ancient Greek because he's a demigod. But it also plays into the concept of the mist in the story, which is sort of a kind of thing that exists everywhere and prevents normal mortals from being able to see all of these mythological, magical things the way that they actually are. So people might see a monster and interpret it as just a kind of large, aggressive dog or something like that.
Who is it that attacks him in the museum there the first time where he kind of gets attacked?
His pre-algebra teacher, Mrs. Dodds, who is actually one of the Furies, or the people who the like monsters who punish people in the underworld for their misdeeds.
Right. So she attacks him, but nobody else sees her as a monster. They just see her as his teacher.
Yeah.
And so it is. It's this. I don't believe in magic. I'm not one to believe in magic, but I sometimes have a second sight, and it's both. Yeah, the ability to read the ancient Greek that. When he's got dyslexia in English, he's having a really hard time reading.
Yeah.
But he reads ancient Greek just fine, and then also he sees the monsters, whereas most people are seeing aggressive dogs or mean teachers, but they're not seeing the creatures that. Or I love his pen that his teacher.
Yeah, it's a ordinary ballpoint pen that when he uncaps it, it expands and turns into an ancient Greek sword that can fight these monsters.
So he's got this second sight, and he doesn't learn about it until that moment, really. And that's the moment where he realizes that he has this second sight, right? When he's in, and not that he hasn't had it before, but he's never noticed it because nobody's ever helped him to understand what it is that he was seeing.
Right.
And then that next line, I'm not one with a sense of proportion when my heart still changes overnight. And I just think that's still very indicative of his character, where he's learning who he is. He's still changing. He's still becoming. Yeah,
and he's a very, he starts out at the beginning of the story as a very young character. He's I think 12 years old in the first book, so he's at a point where he is any normal person even would be experiencing a lot of emotional and physical changes in that sense.
Right, exactly.
And he's got, dealing with monsters and ancient Greek feuds between gods to deal with on top of that. So
Right, absolutely. So the next stanza, I think, to me, this next stanza is really about his relationship with his father, being Poseidon, right?
Yeah.
And he says, it says, I had a dream of a winter garden, a midnight rendezvous, silver, blue, and frozen silence. What a fool I was for you. And it's kind of this idea of wanting to, once he learns who his dad is, right, which he doesn't know right off the bat, but once he learns who his father is, there's this, I think there's a yearning, a desire to meet with him and talk to him
and to get to know him and understand, and maybe have a little bit of that like paternal relationship that he never really had, because Gabe super doesn't count.
Right, exactly. So he's got this kind of, and that's what this kind of, I had this dream of where we're going to meet, right? This winter garden, a midnight rendezvous, silver, blue, and frozen. So I think of the silver, blue as water, the frozen silence, ice. This is all kind of the water realm of Poseidon.
And then that expands even more directly in the second part of the second verse that starts by saying, I had a dream of the open water.
Yeah. I was swimming away out to sea, so deep I could never touch bottom. What a fool I used to be, right? This is him, this dream of having this relationship with his father, this dream of kind of coming together with his father. But then, what a fool I was for you, and what a fool I used to be. Because I think by the end of the book, you see that he's never going to be able to have that relationship that he wants to have.
And then at the same time, this maybe a little bit less so, but it can also address or play into a bit of the fact that Percy, within the story, literally has dreams that kind of warn him about or foretell some of the things that are going to happen during the story, including dreams about his father, not directly, usually a symbol of like a horse or something that represents Poseidon, fighting against Zeus in this conflict that is kind of the main driving force of the story.
Right. So he has the dream, and then he was swimming away out to sea again. It's the water imagery that, and he does have power over water because of his connection to Poseidon, and yet, even with all of that, he still feels like he's been a fool. And that he was a fool for his dad, and so it just goes really well. And then the next line actually plays into kind of that idea of all of these people at Half Camp Blood who are the children of these gods, these Greek gods. And he says, so the first time he says, if I could wave my magic wand, I'd make everything all right. That I think alludes to his mother and her situation. Now this one, if I could wave my magic wand, I'd set everybody free. And I think there's this feeling of, at least from what I remember from the book, there's a little bit of a feeling of abandonment that all of these children have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That
their parents have abandoned them, but have abandoned them to have to fight these monsters. They're kind of trapped. If they leave Camp Half-Blood, there's a good chance they'll be killed.
Yeah, they lose the magical protection that the camp gives them. Right,
so there's this sense of being kind of trapped in a way, and I do think that this line, I'd set everybody free. If I had the power, all of us demigods, all of us children of the gods would be free to just live normal lives. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then our next line, I'm not one to believe in magic, though my memory has a second sight. I'm not one to go pointing my finger when I radiate more heat than light.
Yeah, and this is something that we've talked about before when talking about this as a theme song, but that line, I radiate more heat than light, I think is really indicative of Percy's state, both physically as a demigod and of who he is as a person, because we've established that like the dust of the stars and kind of the symbol of light is connecting in this song to the concept of the gods and the divine, And so it's saying here that he is the son of Poseidon, but more than that, he is a human. He is
Right.
a child, and I radiate more heat than light. He is more
That's the
mortal.
That's the mortal part
than
of
he
him.
is God, and he has problems and relationships that are more like people, which is part of what makes it difficult for him to relate to or have a relationship with his father, but conversely is what makes his relationship with his mother so strong and important to him.
Right, and I do think this is a point where you get to a point in the book where I think he embraces the mortality over the deity,
Yeah.
over the godliness, and he wants to be the mortal. And he recognizes that he has these powers and he's going to have to use them to protect the world and people, but at the same time he's just saying, I radiate more heat than light. Light representing the godly father character, heat representing the mortal mother character.
Mm-hmm.
And he just relates more to the mortal side of life than he does to these immortal beings who really have kind of abandoned him, like we talked about. And again, he says, I'm not one to believe in magic, though my memory has a second sight. At this point, he knows who he is. He knows he's got these powers, and so he's got a memory now of that. Whereas before, he didn't. Before, he had magic powers, but he didn't know, he didn't understand,
Yeah.
he didn't have a memory of powers.
He even starts to be aware that some of his memories that he had in the past of things that just seemed a little weird actually were these more supernatural things that he wasn't picking up on when he was younger because he didn't understand.
Right. And then this next line, again, it's just so Percy Jackson to me. And he says, don't ask me, I'm just improvising. My illusion of careless flight. Can't you see my temperature's rising? I radiate more heat than light. And this is so Percy Jackson to me because he gets into these, he's on this quest,
Mm-hmm.
and he's facing these monsters, and he's facing these, kind of evil characters from Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And he really doesn't know what he's doing. And he's just improvising. Each moment that he's there, he's improvising, and he's doing the best that he can, but it's all improvisation. Because he doesn't have nobody's really trained him. He hasn't gone through enough training to really know how to face these things.
Yeah.
And so he's doing it through improvisation. And that's part of the fun of these books, I think, is at least that first book, is that Percy has all these powers, but he doesn't have a clue how to use them or what to do with them or how to fight these crazy creatures that he's up against. So I love that. Don't ask me, I'm just improvising. My illusion of careless flight. So again, it's this flight, this adventure, this quest, right?
Yeah.
That he's going on, which is in a way kind of careless because it's like you said, he thinks his mother's dead. He wouldn't have gone on the quest otherwise. Mm-hmm. It's almost this careless, almost like whatever, kind of thing. And then he says, "Can't you see my temperature's rising?" Right? He's what he's saying is, I'm moving more towards the mortal side of me. My temperature's rising. It's the heat.
And it's interesting that he starts the story not being aware of his deific parentage or his connection to that side of him, and yet his quest ultimately brings him more in touch with his human side by the end.
Right. And the rest of the song kind of repeats some of the lines that we've already talked about before.
Yeah.
But to me, this is just such a great song to represent this character. He's, starting off with that introductory paragraph that we talked about, his parentage, and then the idea of his connection to his mother. And then going on to where he's learning about his powers. I mean, it's like the song just takes you right through the book.
Yeah.
He's learning about his powers. He's starting to understand, oh my goodness, this is who I am. And then his desire for a relationship with his father, but recognizing that's never going to happen, and as a result, reconnecting again with his mortal side and his mother, and just that whole sense of his improvisations, and his just really takes you through the story of the book from beginning where we're introduced to who he is, but he gradually learns who he is. He goes through this quest, and his desires change throughout the book until you get to the end where he's once again reconnected with his mother, and that's the real meaningful relationship in his life.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up.
So next week we'll have another book and another song.
Yeah, and feel free to tune in every week on Monday to hear our theme song analysis like this, and on Wednesdays and Fridays for the media analysis. We're going to be starting this Wednesday with a kind of analysis of some of the relationships in the Disney princess movies. I'm really excited to get into that. So
we're very excited about that one, and I think you'll enjoy that. So until Wednesday.